All right, we are back, family. We are back, and we are with Gemini here in the eighth house. So, family, the eighth house is basically one of the heavier houses. It's so called the taboo house. So, within this house, this is the area of life that represents anything within a relationship, heavy aspects that no one wants to deal with, like divorce, shared possessions, taxes, death, occult like things, taboo type sex, just all those topics in life that we kind of shy away from or kind of a little resistant to kind of deal with. This is all the eighth house. Now Gemini here, very interesting placement because this house belongs to Scorpio, and as we all know, Scorpio is the deep, depth, and highly intuitive water sign, but it's fixed. So with the mutable energy here, it brings like a different flavor here per se. Now, intellectually, Gemini placements here can be hella good with being like good educators when it comes to anything within the occult topics. And I kind of hate to use that word because it has such a negative stigma to it. So anything that's dealing with esoteric topics, Gemini will be hella good at this simply because of how their mind works and how they're able to go deep within the information and not get lost in that information and basically extract whatever they need and disseminate it out. That's a beautiful thing with the Gemini energy here. What the Gemini have to be careful of is making sure that they don't get too lost and overthink things here. But they can be very good educators because they can understand these topics and like give you many different ways to look at it, just based on how their mind work. And Gemini is also the social energy here too. So, they also have that social charm effect. Now, again, this also depends on what else is aspected because they could just be intellectual based and maybe lacking in the social department or vice versa. So, I kind of touched on this in the seventh house about them being with like partners and the type of partners that they're attracted to, and about the manipulation thing. I am going to touch a little into that in this one. Now, again, the same rule still applies here. Gemini have to be careful. Say they're in a divorce and they're trying to split up the possessions and things like that, and they're trying to figure out who gets what and stuff like that. They have to be careful not to jump into that manipulative energy here because they very can well do that or be manipulated um, as well. So they have to make sure that they're grounded when dealing with these things because they can be the type that can be overly invested or not invested at all. So Gemini has to have that perfect balance here. Um, when it comes to these heavier aspects in life, especially when it comes to like shared possessions, taxes, death, um, Gemini here, especially if they're going through any hardships within this area, they definitely have the ability, the natural and mental capabilities to get themselves out of these situations because they can always look at this from an intellectual standpoint and figure out, okay, what can I learn from this, or what have I learned from this, and how can I not repeat this mistake? So, yeah, Gemini here can definitely have that natural ability when it comes to that. Now, I do want to talk about the topic of death here with Gemini. Again, because they can go so deep in the depths, I believe this topic will be like cake to them. To me, when it comes to like heavier topics with like death and like taboo sex and stuff like that, to me, signs like Scorpio, Gemini, those signs that can really understand the deep depths of these things, hands down, hands down. Um, the approach that the Gemini would take towards death is basically understanding like the front to back process of it. Basically looking at death in a scientific way. What happens within the body, say when someone's passing, or what happens spiritually when someone's passing, or what happens after when someone's passing. Gemini would be more into the things within that realm when it comes to things about death. Now I do want to jump into like taxes as well. Now, it's not to say, again, this is just if the Gemini here is not grounded and is saying there are negative aspects to this house. Um, They have to be careful not to pick up like criminal activity when it comes to like the taxes and stuff like that. If there's negative aspects here, they have to make sure that they're honest in their dealings with that, because Gemini does have the potential here, especially if the aspect if there are negative aspects here, to engage in maybe a little bit of untruthful dealings when it comes to maybe finances with the spouse. So Gemini has to make sure that they be careful for that here as well. Now, this is also the taboo sex house. I did talk about sex in the seventh house. With the eighth house, this is more of like the sex that people don't like to talk about, like same sex, kinks, things like that. Now, Gemini here is actually all for all of that, because again, this stimulates the Gemini. This kind of turns the Gemini on, because this variety is talking about not just sex, but taboo sex, different type of sex, stuff that makes people uncomfortable. And the Gemini will be all for it, because mentally they want to understand, what is it about these topics that make people so cringeworthy or resistant to either engage or even talk about. So Gemini would be all for it, baby. Especially like in the bedroom, they're, like I said, look, I would say anything goes. So, Gemini, depending on what type of partner you have, Gemini could be very fun in this aspect. So if you're not really wanting a partner who's very experimental in that aspect, you probably don't want, to date a person with the Gemini in the eighth house here. Just a heads up. Now, also, I kind of want to jump back into like if they're like educators within this house and they have this placement here. I want to jump into the balance. Now, being that because of how Gemini mind works, and they can basically break down these real taboo topics and just tear them apart and put it in a way that you can basically digest it and understand it. They have to make sure that they don't get so caught up in the mental and the sword esoteric realm that they lose themselves and they get stuck. So they have to be careful here and just make sure that they practice balance. And I really don't see the Gemini kind of getting stuck too much in the mental energy here, because it is mutable and they do have that ability to jump into another energy. So Gemini within the eighth house placement here, just make sure that you do keep that in mind. That was it for Gemini in the eighth house. I'll do Gemini in the ninth house. I will see you in the next video, family.